You're watching A News. I'm Leila Massimo. Here are the top stories. President Donald Trump's plan for the US to take over the Gaza Strip draws strong reactions worldwide. Heavy clashes continue in eastern Congo despite a ceasefire announced earlier this week. Sweden mourns victims of deadliest gun attack which took 11 lives. The suspect's motive is still unknown. US President Donald Trump's plan to take over the Gaza Strip and resettle Palestinians and other countries has drawn widespread criticism from global leaders and international organizations. Worldwide protests condemn the move as escalating repression.
The United Nations European leaders, China and Brazil, are opposed to US President Donald Trump's plan to take over Gaza and resettle Palestinians elsewhere. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres urged President Trump to avoid actions that could lead to forced displacement in Gaza, stressing the need to uphold international law and the need for a two-state solution.
We must reaffirm the two-state solution. Any durable peace will require tangible, irreversible and permanent progress toward the two-state solution, an end to the occupation and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state with Gaza as an integral part.
German President Walter Steinmeier called Trump's suggestion unacceptable, expressing deep concern over the proposal's potential to cause further instability in the region. Meanwhile, China's government voiced strong opposition to the forced relocation of Gaza residents, reiterating their support for a political settlement based on the two-state solution. In Brazil, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva dismisses Trump's vision for Gaza as expansionist and calling it an example of bravado by the US. Egypt stressed the need for reconstruction without moving the Palestinians. Saudi Arabia rejected any attempts to displace the Palestinians from their land, reiterating it would not normalize ties with Israel without the establishment of a Palestinian state. Moscow and Beijing both cited the two-state solution as the right track, with Russia saying that it's the only possible option. Hamas says Trump's plan would put oil on the fire in the region. However, Netanyahu defends Trump's proposal, suggesting there was nothing wrong with allowing Gazans who want to leave to do so temporarily.
Come back, they can relocate and come back, but you have to rebuild Gaza. If you want to rebuild Gaza, you can't have... this is the first good idea that I've heard. It's a remarkable idea, and I think it should be really pursued, examined, pursued, and done, because I think it will create a different future for everyone.
Protests erupted globally, including across the United States, where people gathered in solidarity with Palestinians. Protest organizers criticized the US government for what they saw as escalating repression and colonization in Palestine. Trump's controversial proposal suggested US control over Gaza following the relocation of Palestinians. Trump envisioned transforming the region into a Riviera of the Middle East. Trump's Gaza plan announcement comes after the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas came into effect on January 19th, halting a 15-month war.
Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu's recent meeting has set the stage for major shifts in the Middle East. Trump proposed direct US control over Gaza, a move that raises serious legal and geopolitical concerns, while also pushing for Israel-Saudi normalization. The big question now, can he pressure Netanyahu to halt military operations, or will tensions escalate further?
The meeting between United States President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House, along with their joint press conference, is already seen as a starting point for Washington's revised course in the Middle East. The issue of the Gaza Strip turned into an information bomb as global media focused on one question prior to the meeting: whether the second phase of the agreement would take place. However, Trump took a broader approach, emphasizing direct US control over the situation in Gaza and promising a more comprehensive resolution to the region's problems. Key issues related to the Gaza Strip, from the relocation of enclave residents and reconstruction to economic development and border control, are now being discussed not with Israel's prime minister, but directly with the US president. The first step has already been taken. One of the most crucial corridors in the enclave, Netzarim, is now under control of a US private military company. It is possible to say that a broader strategic game is unfolding behind the scenes of the two leaders meeting. For instance, Trump hinted at Israel's potential annexation of the West Bank, promising to present a more detailed plan in the coming weeks. This is likely part of a strategy to raise the stakes before major negotiations. In other words, agreeing to the conditions related to Gaza might lead to a more concrete US position on the West Bank. During the meeting, relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia were also discussed. Trump's key statement set the tone for the entire conversation. Quote, "They are not demanding the establishment of a Palestinian state," end quote. In other words, mutual recognition and a peace agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia are not necessarily contingent on the creation of a Palestinian state. However, the Saudi leadership has already declared that mutual recognition cannot be considered unless the Palestinian issue is resolved and the Palestinian state is established. Yet, this is merely the starting point for future negotiations, and the course of events could still change. Experts believe Trump understands that the biggest obstacle to the Israel-Saudi normalization process is the ongoing military operations in Gaza. If these operations do not cease, the anticipated large-scale agreement with Saudi Arabia could collapse.
Well, we think that the United States plays a stabilizing role in the Middle East, and they should keep their forces in the region. But the situation in Syria has changed dramatically, and the main issue today is to analyze and understand what are the directions towards which the new leader of Syria is leading the new regime. So far, he's making a big effort to convince everybody that he's moderating and that he can be relied upon, and that he's trying to establish reasonable relations with the Western countries and with the moderate Arab states. He visited Saudi Arabia. At the same time, he keeps very close relations with Turkey. And the Kurds are concerned that this is going to come at their expense. And the fact that if the Americans are going to leave, this is going to weaken the Kurds and it's going to weaken the capability to operate against ISIS in Syria. So I think that if the Americans are going to leave, this is going to have a negative impact on the situation in Syria.
It seems that Trump wants to make the ceasefire agreement a key part of his foreign policy strategy, investing an important political capital to ensure its success. But in the midst of all this, how realistic is Trump's Gaza plan? After the meeting, Trump stated that the US would take control of the Gaza Strip and focus on its economic development. According to this plan, the existing Palestinian population in Gaza would be relocated to neighboring countries, and the US would assume responsibility for the region's security. The implementation of this plan is highly controversial. Experts argue that the forced displacement of Palestinians to other countries violates international law and could lead to even greater instability in the region. Furthermore, US control over Gaza would likely provoke strong opposition not only from Palestinians but also from other regional players. Although it was not explicitly stated in the press conference, discussions reportedly also focused on Iran and its nuclear ambitions. Concerns have been raised over reports that the US may end its military presence in Syria, a move that deeply worries Israeli officials. For Israel, the US presence in Syria is not just about regional stability. It also serves as a security buffer against Iranian influence. If Washington withdraws, Israel would be left to confront Iran-backed groups alone, facing significant challenges in intelligence gathering and airspace control in the region. Some experts believe that Trump's decision to withdraw from Syria may not pass through Washington's powerful lobbying circles. A similar withdrawal decision in 2019 was cancelled due to Israel's security concerns, and history may repeat itself this time as well.
Look, the international humanitarian law have been violated in our region. Mr. Trump proposed to deepen the implementation, the violation of the international humanitarian law. There is some borders that have been created through the history of wars in all over the world that have been violated. And I don't think that the idea to transfer about 2 million people again from where they are living today, not to their original homes, but again to different countries, this will not be accepted by the refugees themselves. And I don't think that it will be easy to implement it. It will create another crisis in the region. I hope, as part of restructuring the global, that the issue in Ukraine and Russia and the issue in Israel and Palestine will be solved through negotiation between the people of the two regions. Otherwise, we will see another bloodshed.
The Trump-Netanyahu meeting could mark a crucial turning point in US-Israeli relations. Facing domestic challenges, Netanyahu views this meeting as an opportunity to bolster his political future and Israel's regional standing. However, Trump's priorities differ. His primary goal is to secure a ceasefire in Gaza and, more importantly, to facilitate normalization with Saudi Arabia while reshaping US influence in the region. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has already made it clear that normalization will not be possible without a ceasefire in Gaza. The biggest question is how much pressure Trump can exert on Netanyahu and how Netanyahu will respond. If military operations in Gaza do not stop, tensions in US-Israel relations could escalate significantly. On the other hand, a US withdrawal from Syria would increase Iran's influence in the region, exacerbating Israel's security concerns. All these developments indicate that a new balance of power is forming in the Middle East. However, how this balance will take shape depends on steps Trump and Netanyahu take in the coming days.
The first U.S. flight carrying migrants to Guantanamo Bay arrived Tuesday evening as part of the Trump administration's crackdown on illegal immigration. The 10 people on the flight were suspected gang members.
The first United States military aircraft carrying detained migrants to Guantanamo Bay has landed in Cuba. This comes as U.S. President Donald Trump's administration prepares to potentially house tens of thousands of migrants at a naval base in the country, which for decades was primarily used to detain foreigners associated with the September 11 attacks. Trump says he wants the Pentagon and Department of Homeland Security to expand a migrant detention facility at the base to hold more than 30,000 migrants. Military flights are a costly way to transport migrants. Reports suggest that a military deportation flight to Guatemala last week likely cost at least over $4,600 per migrant. Officials say the first flight to Guantanamo Bay carried up to 10 immigrants.
Widespread protests continue across the U.S. with hundreds gathering outside Los Angeles City Hall on Wednesday and nationwide. Demonstrators are against President Donald Trump's executive orders, including his immigration crackdown rollback of transgender rights, as well as his proposal for Gaza.
Hundreds of protesters gathered outside Los Angeles City Hall on Wednesday for a fourth day against US President Donald Trump's latest policies. They're opposed to most of his new executive orders, including the crackdown on immigration, transgender rights, and his recent plans for Gaza. The rally was part of a nationwide protest organised by the 50,501 movement. Demonstrators say they want to make a stand against Trump.
I've seen a lot of hatred, whether it be towards trans, LGBTQ, Latinos, all types of communities have been there's just so much bias and hatred out there. I've been a victim of it. And I thought this was a perfect moment. History is being made right in front of me. I will come out here and I'll stand for what I believe in.
In 2016, we didn't know what he was really going to do in office, but now we know. And yeah, I don't know. I can't understand how he got elected. I can't understand how people are okay with this. And I hope that people will start to push back before it's too late.
Demonstrators are demanding a defense of democracy and reject Trump's policies. As well as criticising the president, some protesters also targeted billionaire Elon Musk, who heads Trump's new Department of Government Efficiency.
Greenland's Prime Minister called for an early election on March 11th amid tensions caused by US President Donald Trump's threat to take over the Arctic island. The key issues of the campaign will be Greenland's independence from Denmark and foreign relations.
Greenland's Prime Minister announced a general election on March 11th amid renewed interest from US President Donald Trump in acquiring the Arctic island. Key issues in the campaign include Greenland's independence, relations with Denmark and the US, and its economy, which relies on fishing and Danish subsidies. Trump recently revived his 2019 proposal to acquire Greenland, suggesting military or economic means. In response, Greenland lawmakers moved to ban foreign and anonymous donations and tighten real estate regulations to curb external influence. Despite its mineral wealth, Greenland remains open for business, but does not want to join the US. Prime Minister Mute Egde, in a social media post, urged unity during this unprecedented time, though he did not mention Trump. Egde, who turns 38 on election day, leads a coalition of the Inuit Ataqatigiit and Siumut parties.
I think it's good, and the timing is just right, that the people are going to the polls and then make the decision that is necessary. So, we're fine with that, and we also voted for it.
The push for full independence from Denmark has gained momentum, though parties differ on timing. The opposition Naleeraq party, which holds 5 of the 31 parliamentary seats, is the only one demanding an immediate break.
We have last week presented 5 pillars for our coming election strategy, but if I can sum it up, it's much easier just to mention some of the headlines. The most important one is to start the process of independence from Denmark.
A recent Berlingske Sermitsiaq poll found most Greenlanders would vote for independence, but 45% would oppose it if it hurt living standards, underscoring uncertainty about the path forward.
Mourners gathered in Örebro on Wednesday to remember victims of Sweden's worst mass shooting. The attack at Risbergska Adult Education Center left 11 dead and many injured.
Sweden's King Carl XVI Gustaf and Queen Silvia led the country in mourning as they laid flowers at the makeshift memorial near the school in Örebro that saw 11 people killed Tuesday afternoon, including the shooter. The mass shooting happened at the Risbergska Adult Education Center. At least 6 people were injured, some of them with gunshot wounds. The country showed their respect with flowers and candles.
It felt stable until I saw the last post-conference when they said there were 10 dead. Then I think my mood changed quite a bit and I got sad.
The local chief of police says that the attacker was a 35-year-old unemployed recluse named Rickard Andersson. They say he appealed to have acted alone.
When we arrived at the scene, the officers felt that they have been fired upon by this perpetrator. And what happens is that when we then advance towards this perpetrator, the person is found dead. He probably shot himself. There is much to suggest that it is a solitary act, and that is the picture we have right now. But we look very broadly to see if there could be several perpetrators.
The tragic event has left people living locally in shock.
At first it didn't sound as bad as it was, but eventually my daughter started calling and asking me if I'd been nearby, and then I realised there were more than just a few injured people, so it was terrible all day.
Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson says that February the 4th will forever mark as a dark day. Flags flew at half-mast at the Parliament and the Royal Palace in Stockholm to remember the victims.
Turkey and Germany say they will continue their cooperation in regional matters. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier met in Ankara on Wednesday to discuss Syria, Gaza and Ukraine. The leaders stressed peace in Syria's administration change and highlighted Turkey's advocacy for peace in Ukraine, with Erdogan confident in Germany's support for reconstruction. They urged upholding of the Gaza ceasefire and two-state solution, while Steinmeier criticized Trump's idea to take over Gaza. Discussions included Turkey's EU ties, with Erdogan pushing for customs union reforms and visa liberalization. Germany pledged a €140 million loan for quake-resistant schools. Delta and Japan Airlines planes collided at Seattle Airport. The incident occurred at 10:40 a.m. local time. A Japan Airlines jet arriving from Tokyo struck the back of the waiting Delta plane set to depart from Puerto Vallarta. All 142 Delta passengers were unharmed and will be relocated to another aircraft. Delta will cooperate with authorities, while Japan Airlines has yet to comment. Heavy rains caused a stream to overflow in Cobija, northern Bolivia, affecting at least 100 families. Authorities have launched rescue efforts as floodwaters have damaged homes and infrastructure. Authorities report that at least 30 families have been moved to temporary shelters, while others remain in need of assistance. The Deputy Minister of Civil Defense says rescue efforts are ongoing, with teams providing aid to displaced residents. More rainfall is expected in the coming days, raising concerns about further flooding. Heavy clashes continue in eastern Congo despite a ceasefire announced earlier this week. The UN says fighting between Congolese forces and M23 rebels has intensified, raising concerns about a worsening humanitarian crisis.
On the streets of Goma in eastern Congo, life continues, but beneath the surface, fear is growing. A ceasefire that was meant to bring relief has instead given way to more violence. The United Nations now confirms intense fighting in South Kivu, with the M23 rebels advancing towards Bukavu, just 50 kilometers away. The rebel group, backed by Rwanda, has already taken control of Nibawi, a key mining town rich in gold and coltan. The latest escalation has displaced thousands and left parts of Goma under M23's control.
In Goma, we remain under occupation. The situation is still highly volatile, with a persistent risk of escalation. All exit routes from Goma are under their control, and the airport, also under M23 control, is closed until further notice.
As the humanitarian toll rises, reports of mass casualties are emerging.
So far, 2,000 bodies have been collected from the Goma streets in recent days, and 900 bodies remain in the morgues of the Goma hospitals. We do not think that number would not go up. We expect this number to go up. And there's still many decomposing bodies in certain areas.
With no end in sight, the international community is watching closely, while civilians in eastern Congo brace for what comes next.
French Prime Minister François Bayrou survived his third no-confidence vote in less than 1 month. France is set to adopt a delayed 2025 budget crucial for reducing its massive debt. Under pressure from the EU over its deficit, which exceeds Brussels' limits, France has been in political crisis since President Macron dissolved the National Assembly in June 2024 after his party's European election defeat. Michel Barnier was ousted in December when the far-right and far-left united to topple the government. Impeached South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol appeared at the Constitutional Court on Thursday for the 6th hearing in his impeachment case. The court will decide whether to permanently remove him from office or reinstate him. Yoon was impeached on December 14 after declaring martial law, triggering a constitutional crisis. Detained since last month, he faces insurrection charges. In February's 4th hearing, he denied ordering lawmakers' removal. 3 witnesses will testify on Thursday, with the court ruling deciding if he is permanently removed, requiring a new election within 30 days. Italy will host the 2026 Winter Olympics in just 1 year. The Games will mark Europe's return as a host after 2 decades.
In Italy, the 2026 Winter Olympics will be an exciting event that focuses on sustainability and local culture. The Milano Cortina Games will use mostly exciting and short-term facilities, with 85% of the venues already ready, giving athletes and fans a new experience.
Milano Cortina 2026 will benefit from our Olympic agenda reforms by making use of existing and temporary facilities to a very high degree. 85% of all the facilities are existing, and this way the athletes of the world will benefit from an experienced organizing committee, from an excited crowd, and all the Italian love for sport.
The Games will be spread across northern Italy with beautiful views and excellent facilities, bringing athletes and viewers closer to the region's rich history and culture.
We have tried for this edition to adapt to the territory rather than make the territory adapt to the game. So that's why these games are so spread in 22,000 square kilometers, because we try to pick location where we already had existing infrastructure, but it's not only the infrastructure, it's the culture about a sport.
The Milano Cortina 2026 Winter Olympics will be an event that brings people from all around the world together to share in the excitement of sport.
This is an event that has more to it, and this is bringing the whole world together as one community. And what we've seen in Paris in this respect speaks for the power of sport and the power of the Olympic Games.
With its focus on unity and togetherness, the Milano Cortina 2026 Games will be a true celebration of the global spirit of sport.
That's all for now, but don't go anywhere. Stay tuned to A News for more exclusive updates. We'll be back soon.